Hello friends, today we'll know about the kidneys. We can study the kidneys under the following subheadings. This definition, axis of kidneys, measurements and its shape, movements while during respiration, palpability. It is done by the bimanual examination, factors keeping kidneys in position, coverings, external features, blood supply, nerve supply, lymphatic drainage, development and clinical anatomy. So under these following subheadings, we can study the kidney in detail. So first we'll see about the definition. The kidneys are the pair of excretory organs situated at the posterior abdominal wall on either side of the vertebral column. See here, these are the great blood vessels, abdominal aorta and the inferior vena cava. Behind this, we'll see the vertebral column. So on either side of the vertebral column, on the posterior abdominal wall, behind the peritoneum, we'll see the location of the kidneys. We see the location according to the 9 quadrants. This is the right kidney and this is the left kidney. Each kidney, they are located in the epigastric region. This is the epigastric region, right hypochondric, right lumbar and umbilical region. This right kidney is slightly lower than the left kidney because due to the presence of liver, now we'll see the axis of kidney. This long axis, it passes from the upper pole and the kidneys, they are directed downwards and laterally. If we see in the transverse axis orientation, the kidneys, they are slightly backwards and laterally in the transverse axis orientation. And if we see the transpyrolic plane, this is the transpyrolic plane and this is the transtubercular plane. This transpyrolic plane, which lies above the level of the hilum for the right kidney, whereas for the left kidney, this transpyrolic plane, it lies just below the level of hilum of left kidney. This completes the axis. Now we'll see the measurements of the kidneys. The length of the kidney is 11 centimeter, width is 6 centimeter, and this thickness is 3 centimeters. You see the weight of the kidney. In males it is 150 to 170 grams, whereas in females it is 130 to 150 grams. And if you see the shape of the kidney, these are bean shaped, somewhat reddish brown in color. Movements. We'll see the movements of this kidney while during respiration. There is a slight extent about 1.5 to 2.5 centimeter while there is a respiration. When person standing from the recumbent supine position to standing position, there will be the slight descent of the kidneys. Here, this is the procedure. We call it as a bimanual palpation. Usually in thin persons only we can do this examination. In an average built person, we can't examine these kidneys. Until and unless if the person is very thin, then we can go for this bimanual palpation. In this procedure, in these two hands, one hand we should kept on the anterior abdominal wall and the other hand at the loin. By applying a gentle pressure, ask the subject to take deep inspiration, then we can able to feel the kidneys. Next, factors keeping the kidneys in position. Mainly pressure, first one. The pressure exerted by the neighboring viscera, this is one of the factors to keep the kidneys in position. Along with that, the tone of an anterior abdominal wall muscles. This is also one of the factors. Second one, disposition of renal fascia. Here, this kidneys, it is covered by some coverings. First one is fibrous capsule, after that perinephric fat. Third layer, it is a renal fascia. This is known as a false capsule. After this, we will see the paranephric fat. So, these are the coverings from inside to outside. the disposition of renal fascia and the arrangement of fat. This is also one of the factors to keep the kidneys in position. Third factor is pedicles. Here the pedicle, it is formed by the hilum. In this hilum we'll see the blood vessels which are going into the kidney and come out of from the kidney. Next, as I already told you that these are the coverings of the kidney from inside to outside. First one is a fibrous capsule. Next one is perinephric fat. Third one is renal fascia, and the fourth one is paranephric fat. So first layer it is the fibrous capsule. It is also known as a true capsule. This fibrous capsule, it covers entire the kidney on its anterior surface, posterior, and the medial and lateral borders. Usually in adults, it is loosely attached. We can easily strip it off. But in pathological conditions, this fibrous capsule, it is tightly adhered to the. This fibrous capsule is nothing but a condensed fibrous stroma. See here in this image, with the help of forceps, here this fibrous capsule, it is stripped off here. Now we'll see the tracings of renal fascia in this image. This is the PS of a trunk, transverse section of the trunk, which is done at the level of lumbar vertebra with the two kidneys on either side and with the great blood vessels in the midline. And this is the peritoneal cavity, and the blue line which is seen here, this is the disposition of this renal fascia. Before the renal fascia, we have to know about the perinephric fat. See here, this is the perinephric fat. After covering of this fibrous capsule, next layer it is the perinephric fat. This perinephric fat, it is nothing but a adipose formed by the adipose tissue, which is more abundant on the lateral and medial borders of the kidney. This is the perinephric fat. After that, we'll see the renal fascia. See here in this image, you can see the renal fascia, which is covering the lower pole of the kidney. Actually, it covers the entire surface of the kidney. See, in this image, you can learn the tracings of the renal fascia. This renal fascia, it is a false capsule. This is the anterior layer of the renal fascia, which is known as the fascia of Told. It is very thin. And this is the posterior layer of the renal fascia, which is known as the fascia of Zucker-Kandel. This is the kidney and the yellow colored adipose tissue. This is the perinephric fat here. On the kidney itself, there will be the adherence of this true capsule. After that, we'll see the perinephric fat. And after that, false capsule, this green colored outline, it represents the false capsule known as the renal fascia. Now we'll see how the renal fascia it is dispersed. This is the anterior layer of the renal fascia, and this is the posterior layer. Both these layers, they join together at the lateral end of the kidney, and they adhere with the fascia covering the transverse abdominis muscle. That fascia is known as fascia transversalis. See here, this is the transverse abdominis muscle. It is covered by a fascia known as a fascia transversalis. So if you see on the anteriorly, it covers the anterior surface of entire kidney, and then it passes towards the medial side, which passes in front of the great blood vessels, and they blend with the connective tissue of these blood vessels, and it will meet with the opposite renal fascia of other kidney. That is about the anterior layer. Now we'll see the posterior layer of the renal fascia. This posterior layer, it adheres with the fascia which is covering the quadratus lumborum. This is the quadratus lumborum. It is covered by a fascia known as thoracolumbar fascia. This posterior layer of the renal fascia, it merges with the thoracolumbar fascia and the fascia covering the psoas major muscle. The fascia covering the psoas major muscle, it is known as the iliopsoas. So this posterior layer, it merges with the fascia of thoracolumbar and iliopsoas fascia, and then it eventually it is merged with the lumbar vertebra along with its intervertebral discs. See here on the medial side, there will be the medial septum, which is extended from the anterior layer of the renal fascia. Through this medial septum, we will see the passage of these renal vessels. This is about the disposition of lateral and medial side, medial septum, and posterior layer. Now we'll see about the anterior above disposition. First we have to see the image. This is the anterior layer of the renal fascia and this is the posterior layer. Both these layers, they unite together at its upper pole and then they split into two layers here to enclose the suprarenal gland inside. So it encloses the gland. After enclosing the suprarenal gland, again they form one ligament that is known as a suspensory ligament of suprarenal gland, which attaches to the underneath surface of the diaphragm. This is the diaphragm. So the suspensory ligament of suprarenal gland which attaches to the underneath surface of the diaphragm. So this is one of the reasons for the movement of kidney while during respiration. We see on the below, the lower pole, these two layers, they remain separate and they pass in front and behind the ureter and then slowly the anterior layer of renal fascia, it merges with the extraperitoneal connective tissue of the iliac fossa, whereas the posterior layer of renal fascia, it merges with the iliac fascia. So this is about the renal fascia disposition above below. We will see the external features of the kidney. This is the anterior surface and this is the posterior surface. This anterior surface, it is flat and irregular and it is having an upper pole and lower pole. This upper pole which is broad and it gives an attachment to the suprarenal gland. Comparatively to see the lower pole, it is narrow. This upper pole is close to the median plane rather than the lower pole and it is having a outer convex border and this is the inner concave border. In its middle we will see a depression known as a hilum. From the hilum we will see the structures from before backwards: renal vein, renal artery and renal pelvis. See here, this is the posterior surface of the kidney. In fetus, this kidney, it is formed by the number of lobulations. It is around 12. After birth, these lobulations gradually they will fuse to attain adult pattern. But the persistence of these lobulations will be seen in the adult kidney. It gives an evidence that in fetus, the kidneys they are developed from number of lobules. We will see the anterior surface relations for both right and left kidney. This is the right kidney. This is the upper pole which gives an attachment to the right suprarenal gland. And if we see this medial concave border above the level of hilum, it gives an attachment to suprarenal, and below the level of hilum, which continues as a renal pelvis and descends downwards as a ureter. Now we'll see this anterior surface of this right kidney. Here we'll see the relation of liver, hepatic area. It is related to liver and this is related to colic area, transverse colon, and this yellow colored area, it is related to coils of small intestine. You see this image, this is the left kidney. Here upper pole, it gives attachment to the left suprarenal gland and this is the gastric area related to stomach and this is the splenic area related to spleen and this is the area which is related to the body and tail of the pancreas and this is the jejunal area which is related to coils of small intestine and this green colored part, it is related to the descending colon. Out of this, in the right kidney, this hepatic area and the coils of jejunal area, these two are covered by the peritoneum. Here in the left kidney, this gastric area, splenic area and colic area, gastric area, splenic area and jejunal area. These three are covered by the peritoneum. Here we will see the posterior relations of both right and left kidney. This is the right and this is the left kidney. Due to the presence of the right kidney somewhat at lower level, it is related to only the lower border of 12th rib, whereas the left kidney it is related to the 11th and 12th rib in its upper part. This posterior part relations we can study in two parts, upper part and lower part. This upper part for both kidneys, it is related to medial and lateral arcuate ligaments of diaphragm. Next one, and the upper part, This left kidney, it is related to 11th and 12th ribs, whereas for the right kidney, only 12th rib is in relation. If you see the lower part from medial to lateral, three muscles are in relation with the kidney. From medial to lateral, first one is psoas major, this one is the quadratus lumborum, and this is the transverse abdominis muscle from medial to lateral. Along with that, we'll see the subcostal vessels and nerve. Here, the nerve color they should give in yellow, but here it is in green color. So please don't mind that. This is the nerve, subcostal vessels and nerve. And this is the iliohypogastric nerve, and this is the ilioinguinal nerve. Structures passing through the hilum. This is the medial concave depression known as a hilum. From before backwards, the structures are renal vein, renal artery, and the renal pelvis, which descends downwards and continues as the ureter. To differentiate whether the kidney belongs to right or left, first we have to see the structures present in the hilum from before backwards. Valve structures should be there. Along with that, the direction of the ureter, it can also determine to place the poles of the kidney in exact position. The level of inferior pole, this renal pelvis will continue as the ureter. By that we can keep these kidneys in anatomical position. And next we'll see the renal angle. The lower and the posterior surface of the kidney will be seen at the renal angle. The tenderness of the kidney can be appreciated by palpating this area with the thumb by applying a gentle pressure. This is the renal angle, which is formed by the lateral border of the rectus spinae muscle and the lower border of the 12th rib. So this part it forms a renal angle. With the help of the thumb, by applying gentle pressure, we can feel the tenderness of the kidney. It's one macroscopic structure of the kidney. As we all know that we are studying from our childhood, this is the outer cortex and this is the inner medulla. This outer cortex, it is divided into two parts, cortical arches and renal columns. You can see in this image, this is the TS of kidney. This area, it is the cortex, this part. And this is the renal medulla having the 7 to 10 renal pyramids. Each renal pyramid, you see the parts, this is the base of the renal pyramid and this is the apex of the renal pyramid. 2 to 3 apices of the renal pyramid, they will open into the single minor calyces. Here we'll see the 7 to 10 minor calyces will be there. These are the minor calyces. Single minor calyces will receive the 2 to 3 apices of renal pyramids. This minor calyces ultimately they leads into the major calyces, which are 2 to 3 in number. They'll continue as the renal pelvis and ureter. So first, now we'll see about the cortex. This cortex, the cortical area which is lying above the level of base of the renal pyramid, we call it as a cortical arch. And the part of the cortex which descends in between the renal pyramid, we call it as a renal column. Okay, so cortical arch and renal column. A renal pyramid with its overlying cortical arch, its apices, it is known as a lobe of kidney. One lobe of kidney is formed by a renal pyramid with overlying cortical arch. It is known as a lobe of a kidney. Renal sinus is the space which is extended inside the kidney. This part we call it as a renal sinus. You see the microscopic structure of the kidney. Around there are 1 to 3 million uriniferous tubules will be there. Uriniferous tubules, it is divided into two parts. One is the secretory part and other one is the collecting part. Now we'll see the secretory part. In that secretory part, again it is divided into two parts. First one is Malpighian corpuscle or renal corpuscle, which is formed by the glomerulus, a tuft of capillaries, and these will be seen in the Bowman's capsule. This slowly continues as the coiled PCT, proximal convoluted tubule, and then loop of Henle, and then DCT, distal convoluted tubule. And this is the secretory part. Now we'll see the collecting part. This is the collecting tubule, collecting duct. In this, number of ducts will open that ultimately leads to the formation of duct of Bellini. They will open into the minor calyces. This is the renal pyramid. At its apices, it opens into the minor calyces. So this is about the microscopic structure of the kidney. So two types of nephrons will be there. First one is cortical nephrons and other type is juxtamedullary nephrons. Renal sinus. See in this image the outline of this red colored part. Entire the space lies within it. It is known as the renal sinus. It is then space which is invaginated within the kidney. Here the space it is formed by the minor calyces and the major calyces. Renal hilum, it is the area that connects the renal sinus to perinephric space here. So the renal artery coming from the abdominal aorta, they divide into ventral and dorsal branches. This ventral branch, it is divided into 4 segmental branches. First segmental branch, it goes to the apical level. Second segmental branch to the caudal part, and third and fourth upper anterior and the middle anterior. So the ventral branches will see the 4 segmental branch, whereas for the dorsal surface we'll see only 1 segmental branch for the posterior aspect. This first renal artery, it gives the ventral branch. From the ventral branch, it gives 4 segmental branches, which goes to one part apical level, and one segmental branch goes to the lower level, upper and other one upper anterior, and other segmental branch to the middle anterior. So 4 segmental branches. So after that, these segmental branches, they form the interlobar arteries. These are the interlobar arteries. These things. So these interlobar arteries, they passes between the renal pyramids and they arch over the base of the renal pyramid to form a arcuate artery. So these are the interlobar arteries. These interlobar arteries, they arch over the base of the renal pyramid to form arcuate. From that arcuate artery, these small twigs coming, we call it as a interlobular arteries. Interlobular arterioles. The aorta, renal artery, segmental arteries, interlobar, arcuate, interlobular arterioles. From that efferent arterioles, which goes to the glomerulus to form the tuft of capillaries there. From that efferent arteriole will arise. From that thing, peritubular capillaries plexus, directly venous drain, interlobular vein, arcuate vein, interlobar vein, renal vein, and inferior vena cava. This chart you should draw in exams, which covers both the arterial and the venous drainage of the kidney. This is the nerve supply of the kidney. It is supplied by the axis of nerves coming from the celiac ganglion. Sympathetic nerve supply, it is by the T10 to L1 segments of spinal cord. These nerves, they'll arise as an offshoot plexus from the celiac ganglion. Now we'll see the development of kidneys and anomalies. First one, according to the number. At birth, if there is any absence of one kidney or both kidneys, that condition it is known as the agenesis of the kidney. Next one is according to position. Sometimes the kidney, they won't attain into the normal position and they remain in the pelvic position only. So this is one of the condition. Usually the kidneys, they have to reach towards the lumbar region. They ascend from the pelvic to lumbar region, but in this anomaly they remain in the pelvic position only. If you see the third case, according to the size, the lower poles of both kidneys, they fuse together to form horseshoe shaped kidney. In this image you can see these are the two kidneys. These two lower poles of each kidney, they fuse together to form the horseshoe shape. One polycystic kidney. This is an autosomal dominant disorder. In this condition, we'll see number of cysts will be occupying in the renal parenchyma. So by the appearance of all these cysts, there will be the impairment of the kidney. Accessory renal arteries. Sometimes accessory renal arteries will be seen. Usually it is not there, but in 15% of individuals there will be the chances of accessory renal arteries. According to the mobility, sometimes we'll see the floating kidney. In this condition, usually the kidney is located between T12 to L3 vertebra. In this, the kidneys they descend up to 5 centimeters. There will be the one procedure for the fixation of floating kidney, that is known as the nephropexy. Single kidney having two ureters. This is one of the developmental anomaly. You can see in this image, this is the hypoplasia. This one kidney it is normal, another kidney it is impairment. It shows an impairment in its development. This condition is known as a hypoplasia or dysplasia. Here there is a complete absence of kidney, that is known as agenesis. And here we'll see the multicystic dysplasia. Number of cysts will be there here. This is the polycystic kidney condition. Here you can see the double ureters here. This is one of the developmental anomaly known as a renal hypoplasia. In this, there will be the failure of development of one kidney to its normal weight. Usually it occurs in unilateral only. And this is the horseshoe-shaped kidney, as I already mentioned you before. Next one, we'll see the clinical anatomy. This is the nephritis. In this nephritis, this is the inflammation of tissues within the parenchyma of the kidney, like major and minor calluses, like that. So, if there is any inflammation in that tissues regarding that kidney, that condition is known as a nephritis. Sometimes there will be the procedure called decapsulation. This decapsulation is done in acute nephritis condition to relieve the pressure on the renal tubules. The main cause is to suppress the urine. This decapsulation will be done. Next one, pyelonephritis. This is one of the urinary tract infection which ascends from urethra to urinary bladder, from urinary bladder to the ureters. Ultimately, it reaches to the kidney. So it causes the infection to the kidney, known as chronic kidney disease. Next, third condition is the tuberculosis of kidney. Sometimes pulmonary tuberculosis, it may spread to the brain and also to the kidneys. Next one, renal stones or renal calculi. These renal stones, there is a lithotripsy, which is the procedure by giving the ultrasound shock waves. The larger fragment of these renal stones, they dissolve into smaller fragments and they pass through urine. So that procedure it is known as a lithotripsy. And tumors, this is the carcinoma of the kidney. The exposure of the kidney, we should keep in mind at the lower border of the 12th rib, just before the lower border of the 12th rib, there is a costodiaphragmatic recess. While there is a surgical exposure of the kidney, the main thing should remind is at the lower border of the 12th rib, just in front of the lower border of 12th rib, we'll see the encroachment of this costodiaphragmatic recess. So while doing the surgical procedures, you should be very careful. Sometimes this 12th rib may be very small and complete absence of the 12th rib may be seen. In that conditions, the 11th rib will be mistaken as the 12th rib and there is a direct opening of this pleural cavity may be seen. To avoid all the risky situations, nowadays this lithotripsy procedure is doing for the renal stones. So these are the few clinical aspects regarding the kidney. As I forgot to tell you that lymphatic drainage. This lymphatic drainage of kidney it is done by the lateral aortic group of lymph nodes. And development of kidney it is developed by the metanephric intermediate mesoderm. These are the permanent kidneys. Actually, these kidneys they develop from the pronephros, meso, and metanephros of the intermediate part of mesoderm. But the metanephric part of the intermediate mesoderm, it forms the permanent kidney. So this completes the kidney in detail. Thank you.